We'll get started. Excellent. So a very warm welcome to everyone that has joined us for the launch of the Youth Voice Census 2023. This is our huge and our biggest report that we do at Youth Employment UK, and one now that I know is important to so many of our friends and partners across the sector who are equally as keen to hear the voices of young people on a range of issues, from education all the way through to employment. My name is Laura Jo Morlings. I'm the Chief Exec here at Youth Employment UK. It's a pleasure to be here and to be kicking off this session with you all today. But actually, my main job is to be housekeeping and to be the host before I hand over to the Deputy CEO, Lauren Mystery, who will be leading the key findings. So generally, in terms of housekeeping, as you can see, we've got a big room and it continues to fill up. So please do take the opportunity to use the chat function to introduce who you are and where you're from. We would ask that everyone keeps their mics muted, and particularly once Lauren starts presenting, she's got a lot to get through and be very distracted if you can hear your dogs in the background or any other background noises. We love a cat as well. But please do keep your mics muted. We will not be taking a Q&A today, but there will be an opportunity for our members and partners to do deep dives with us sort of following this launch today. So if you do have particular questions, please do use the chat function to pick them up, and we will come back to you outside of the session today. But as I say, we won't be having a live Q&A today. What we do have live, though, is we'll hear from Lauren, who's going to present the key findings, and then we're going to hand over to my colleague, Eleanor Chambers, and she'll be talking to two young people that are in the call to hear their sort of reflections from this year's Youth Voice Census and to catch up on them what they've been sort of thinking about as sort of young people within the space that we operate in. So we will have a short panel with both Harry and Kira on, led by Eleanor, and then I'll return to you to do sort of a wrap up and next steps before we close. I do expect that we'll be closing around about 2 o'clock because we'd sort of up the timing just in case we're going to house that Q&A. But I think it's better for us to take questions away offline. So you'll get an earlier finish from us at 2 o'clock, which I know is a gift worth having. I'm told it's called golden time, when you're blocked out for something and then the meeting ends a bit earlier, so you can get a cup of tea and prepare for your next meeting. So we're not sorry to give you some golden time, and you're very, very welcome. I have to do some thank yous before I hand over to Lauren, and those will start with our amazing sponsors of this year's Youth Voice Census. So as you can see here, that includes Amazing Apprenticeships, the Edge Foundation and Pearson. All three organisations have been supporting the Youth Voice Census and our work for a number of years. And this, in fact, is the 6th Youth Voice Census, which gives us a great perspective of kind of the growing opportunities and challenges facing young people. But without the support of Amazing Apprenticeships, the Edge and Pearson, we really wouldn't be able to do the report justice. It takes such an incredible resource from Youth Employment UK to develop the census, to produce a question set each year to ensure that young people, wherever they may be, are having the opportunity to have their voices heard. And this year wasn't just with our online census question set, but also some of our staff team went out to some of our partner organisations to meet young people in person and really kind of bring their stories and experiences to life. So in addition to our three amazing sponsors, I also want to thank Merseyside Youth Association, Stonewall, St Basil's, and colleagues across Haven who allowed some of our teams to go to the seaside so we could really capture that hyper-local experience of young people who are in our coastal towns and coastal places. Those Youth Voice sessions were really important to this year's Youth Voice Census, and actually we're going to be hearing from Harry, who was one of the participants of that Youth Voice session at Merseyside Youth Association, who's joined us again today to share his views and reflections. So a big thank you, and I can see you on the screen already, so I'm glad that you're here and present. The backdrop for this year's Youth Voice Census is so critical. We are now back to over 1 million young people who are not in full-time education or employment. We are seeing so much political change with, kind of waiting on the announcements of next year's general election timing and politicians really vying for different manifesto calls. So I think this year's Youth Voice Census is really able to give us a grounding of what's working and what's not working for young people and what we need to see more of. And I won't steal Lauren's thunder, but it is so important that we have this data set and this research, and that so many of you are here to take on the findings from today and the report as it launches online and go out and represent and share those views, because it is critical as to where we are that these voices and these experiences of young people are being championed by all of those on the call today. So thank you all so much for being here. But as I say, the census wouldn't be possible without Lauren, our Deputy Chief Exec, who leads the way in crafting the census questions, working with our partners to check what else we might want to ask this year, because the landscape's changed again underneath young people's feet, and working across our entire team to ensure the project management and the delivery of the Youth Voice Census is world class. And as you will see this year, it absolutely is. So a massive thank you to Lauren, but also across the team, the staff and colleagues at Youth Employment UK who have participated. I do always worry that sometimes young people won't want to tell us each year their views and their experiences, but as Lauren's about to tell you, they absolutely did. So without further ado, let's go and find out what young people have told Lauren and the Youth Employment UK team in 2023.
Thank you so much, and welcome everybody to today. Such an important day and a great moment that you all show up for, to hear about young people. Whether this is your first Youth Voice Census, you're sixth, or somewhere in between, you are most welcome. And it's really important that we do all hear the stories and moments for young people. The Youth Voice Census, for those that don't know, is the biggest collection of youth voice and insight in the UK. It's an annual survey that provides us with a unique understanding of the experiences young people aged 11 to 30 are having right now, and how they're feeling about their really immediate futures and the long-term future too. The sixth Youth Voice Census has been our biggest yet. We had over 4,270 young people, 4,276 to be precise, took their time to really share with us how they are doing in 2023. And the Youth Voice Census is always a moment in time that asks them how they are right now, their moments, the things they're looking forward to in the future, but it's a look back on the 12 months previous to. So this year's Youth Voice Census run from the 31st of March to the 5th of June. That is the time we collected all of the data for this too. So when you're thinking back to that time, it very much speaks to lots of the key issues that we started to see back at the early part of this year, but that continue for young people too. We always supplement what is a huge quantitative data set. When we are pulling the Youth Voice Census question set together, it always goes above 250 questions. Now, don't worry, not all young people answer all 250 questions, but they end up answering a lot. These young people that commit to taking part in the Youth Voice Census every year answer well over 120 questions each, and they keep showing up, they keep coming each year to tell us more and more about their experiences. And every time we then go to redesign the data set, we think about something else, another important moment for young people to share with us. Youth employment and youth unemployment has a myriad of factors that go into it. We have to be asking young people about where they live, their safety, the things they have access to in terms of careers, education and job support, but also those holistic factors that sit in and around young people too, from being able to access local parks and volunteering opportunities and things like after school clubs and extracurricular activities too. To support that massive quantitative data set, as LJ mentioned, we go out each year to do some qualitative work too. So our youth ambassadors, the Merseyside Youth Association, St Basil, Stonewall and Haven Young People have really been able to bring to life in this year's census what that really means, where they live. How these national views that we'll talk about today, this weighted evidence set that I'll talk you through, plays out in both communities, regionally, geographically, but also in communities for those young people with protected characteristics and how they and how they associate themselves too. We don't take lightly at Youth Employment UK our role as the safe space for young people to share their voice. It is a massive privilege, and it never fails to amaze me. We think about asking young people 120 questions each year, that young people continue to show up to answer that. No matter how many more questions we add, and no matter what the world is throwing at them and what people continue to say about young people, they show up and they stay all the way to the end too, which I have to say gives me goosebumps every time I'm looking at the data set to go through. The response rate, diversity, and the commitment that we see young people giving the Youth Voice Census is a humbling reminder of how much we still have left to do and how little opportunities young people have to share their voice on the issues that are important to them. The full Youth Voice Census report is available today. If it hasn't been shared in the chat already, it will be very soon. I encourage you to read all of it. Yes, it is massive. It is 169 pages, for which we don't apologise. We don't want you to read it just because it takes us a long time to pull together. But in its entirety, it will give you a snapshot of what you need to know right now about education, about employment, about young people who are unemployed. It's a real stark reminder of the past, for young people who have missed out on some of those education opportunities in the last 2 years. And prior, it's a real look back at that past and what we have left to fix. And it's a real moment to think about the future too. Of those young people who are 11 answering this right now, what is to come for them is hugely important. So I'll respect that you might not read it all today, but it's really important that you take the time. Young people have taken their time to share so much of their story, their struggles, their wins, and they've got some brilliant insight as to what they hope the sector, the different organisations stepping in to support them, how we can all respond to that. We have to keep showing up for young people too. I'm going to talk you through the 4 key findings of the Youth Voice Census this year too. Perhaps unsurprisingly, this year's Youth Voice Census is a really stark reminder of some of the things that we haven't been able to fix across the last couple of years. Last year's Youth Voice Census spoke at length about the mental health crisis young people were facing. And people have made it clear to us this year that those issues have not been resolved, and they continue to morph into a really bleak reality of disconnection, of disenfranchisement, of the pressure young people feel to catch up to a pre-COVID level across education, across employment, when they're looking for work, across motivations, across their social activities too. But they are really here to remind us that actually the due support and resources they need to do that have not been put in place to help them. Also, it's really clear to young people that they really feel like wholly unprepared for what's coming next, facing a future that still feels uncertain when we think about the number of challenges we have faced since COVID alone. But they also feel really unprepared to be able to access opportunities, and that there's a real lack of quality work and opportunities around them. So we're going to walk through these 4 key findings now. What we'll talk about is the weighted view of the Youth Voice Census and how that data nationally plays out. As you work through the census, you'll see there are some additional data sets that sit and come out of the census too. I'll warn you, we don't start to get some good news until key findings 3. So drink your coffee, drink your tea, and settle in for some of the stories that we'll tell. We've heard frequently, not just since last year's Youth Voice Census, but in the years leading up to it too, that young people are struggling, really struggling with their mental health and the kind of catalyst that COVID-19 really allowed to play out. But there's a story, and we've heard it consistently throughout the last 12 months, and people are really struggling. They're struggling to access the support that they need, but they're struggling to know what to do next too. The story, sadly, won't feel unfamiliar for most of the people on the call. The anxiety, worry, and loss of control young people have felt has gone unsupported. And what it's doing is it's really making way for fear and isolation in young people. We heard at length this year about disconnect and how young people are really feeling about their local community. They feel unsupported, unable to access anything. Everything feels scarce for young people. Talk about job opportunities, housing, physical and mental health care. They're feel as though they're competing against each other for everything. This moment in terms of young people, it's left them turning on each other, their peers, their neighbours. They really do have this sense that others are to blame for them missing out on opportunities. It's leading to a very real sense that from what we're hearing from young people of worrying levels of antisocial behaviour amongst them, and a real growing sense of apathy. And people really don't know what to do next and if it's worth doing. This them and us narrative can be seen across all groups of young people. For those young people who are 11 up to 30, it's a real concern how they genuinely feel as though it's their peers, their friends, their neighbours who are taking the very scarce opportunities around them too. The instances of discrimination in the Youth Voice Census this year were startling. And that's as young people as the victims of and the perpetrators of those opportunities too. We'll see frequently throughout the free text commentary in the census these instances and these moments. And it really highlights how young people are really feeling really desperate in what comes next for them too. We can recognise the disparity in opportunities for those with protected characteristics, and it's really important that we do that. There are groups still getting less support, still getting less access to opportunities than their peers, but the reality is that all young people are telling us that there's nothing for them. And how that feels for young people and how they feel within their local community, that plays out in 4 in 10 young people not feeling safe where they live, and 3 in 10 not feeling safe within the learning environment they're currently in. Young people don't feel like they belong in their local communities, and just 3 in 10 feel like they have a role model, and 3 in 10 feel like they have someone to talk to about those opportunities too. And people have come into a world where change and uncertainty is their new normal. We will continue to talk about the impacts of COVID-19 for years to come, but actually the political, environmental and economic challenges are stacking up for young people. And 42.9% of young people have changed their study choices in the last year. And for most of them, that's not for the first time. And over half of young people currently in work have changed their career plans and their choices in the last 12 months too. For 51.6% of young people it's really difficult to decide your career choices. It's really difficult to find those opportunities and jobs in the first place. They've found themselves in a situation where they have to decide again what's next. That planning and sense of the long-term future really appears futile for young people. They are making choices based on what they can get, what they can afford, what's safe to access, what's accessible to them too. It's not about what you want to be when you grow up. It's about what can I be right now? What is there? How safe can I be in terms of doing it? That aspiration and that moment for young people is just not there for them. We see too how this challenge will continue to grow. Without the equality and equity in what can be accessed for young people, who they are and where they live will continue to leave them feeling isolated and disconnected. It's a real concern for us that as we move into the next year and the years to come for young people, it's a real moment where we have to change it for them. So we'll move on to catching up. And it's a phrase that we don't enjoy at Youth Employment UK. The rhetoric we hear about catching up education, catching up support. The reality of the last 12 months for young people has been another of disruption and delay. We know that COVID-19 has changed things. It's changed how we all live, work, study and engage with others. But it's the continued disruption that's followed that's really causing an issue for young people this year. Industry strikes, in particular, have really led to more disruption, with young people in education experiencing the worst of that. 55.1% of young people in education agree that their learning have been disrupted a lot or a great deal in the last 12 months. That's not just a massive figure, but it's higher than last year. It's higher than the height of COVID-19 too, when we asked this same question. We heard from young people that they continue to miss school, primarily due to illness, both physical and mental, and they have felt that much more this year than in previous years. We also heard that young people had really been feeling a lack of motivation to participate in education too. The constant challenges, the lack of kind of support around that too has really led them to feel as though it isn't worth participating within their learning and their courses at the moment. We heard too that teachers had been absent, with illnesses most commonly keeping teachers away. But of course, the additional strikes and factors, particularly around teachers leaving education altogether, had played a part in young people's disruption this year too. We know too that outside of those education experiences, that young people gain skills, motivation, confidence in things like work experience, experience of work, and community activities. And work experience is down on the last year by around 6.8%. So only around 29% of young people in secondary school had access to work experience in the last 12 months. It's a shockingly low number, and it's a really important moment where young people do learn skills and grow their confidence too. What we also know is how this decreases as you get older. Young people within college or sixth form had less, and actually young people in university were getting even fewer chances and experiences the closer they got to being able to access work, with only 17.3% of young people in university having had access to work experience in the last 12 months. A lack of work experience has for the last 6 years featured as one of young people's biggest barriers to work. It is currently the biggest barrier young people not in work face. It's the thing that is holding them back the most. It's also what young people currently in work said would have been the biggest change maker for them too. If they had had work experience, they feel as though they would have had access to work faster and perhaps been able to find better quality work sooner. We know too that access to local facilities, enrichment and extracurricular support is down. Young people have less access to sports, leisure facilities and youth clubs in the last year. Participation for young people currently in school, less than 50% of young people had any extracurricular activities too. We know as employers, we know as the sector that this is where young people can grow in a safe space, those confidence, they can explore teamwork, problem solving, their communication skills in those places and spaces. And young people aren't having access to be able to do that. When we think about the support young people are getting, we've heard frequently this year about the rise in support young people are having from their parents. Parents are 40% more likely to be providing young people support in 2022. Now, if you have access to parents and your parents are in a place to be able to support you, perhaps that may seem unsurprising, but we think mostly about those young people who don't have that parental support, whose parents don't have support to the same access, resources, information and insight that some of us do. But also for young people, when we're thinking and asking what support they're getting, some of these support areas that parents are being the only network to are really specialist mental health support, physical health support is what parents are providing to. It is not just that parents are supporting their young people, but they're supporting them in moments where actually there should be additional services reaching out and being able to be there for young people in those really important moments. I'll point out again, because it is so important, there are still young people out there receiving less, who catching up is going to be all the more important. Black respondents from the LGBTQ+ community, especially our transgender respondents and care leavers, are likely to be receiving 10% less opportunities for work experience, 10% less opportunities to be growing across careers education, and 10% less likely to be able to access local support networks around them too. It is really important that when we think about catching up, we are addressing some of the long-standing equality and equity access points that young people have had. Perhaps unsurprisingly then, when we think about facing the future for young people, it's a difficult moment and it's a difficult landscape for them. I did though promise you some good news at point 3, which is a moment that we'll celebrate into. We don't sit here as Youth Employment UK and think that nobody is doing anything. In fact, it's all the more frustrating because we have friends, partners, supporters out there who we know are doing brilliant work across the space. There is a moment though to connect it better, to understand where those connections are being lost to. The good news is that for young people in secondary school, we see a much needed and welcome increase in careers and education experiences. All types of careers experience are up, but in particular, there's a 10 percentage point rise on last year's figures in young people being able to access careers fairs, mentors, and employers visiting school. What's really important about that, and those are the things that young people ask for more of. They are those people moments, those moments to have conversations with people too. So we're really excited that for young people in education, they're getting more of that. That leads to young people being 70 percentage points more likely to rate the support they are offered by their school as good or very good. And we see the closest level of parity in terms of young people hearing about apprenticeships and young people hearing about university than we ever have before, which is hugely exciting for the sector and those who've worked hard for many years to be able to do that. In parallel, though, we see college, sixth form, and universities that all careers engagements are down. The older you get, the less likely you are to be having those careers engagements and experiences. And for those not in education, employment, or training, there are less opportunities to build the skills, knowledge, and confidence. There's less careers and personal support available for those groups of young people, and it couldn't be more important, not just for those that left education in the last 2 years, but if you have been NEET during COVID-19, you are likely to feel more disconnected, less sure that you will have the tools and skills to be able to make your next step choices. Year on year, the number of young people who think they can access quality work where they live is decreasing. Just 12.4% of young people, what a number, think there are quality opportunities available where they live. This isn't just worse than last year and the year before and the 4 years before that. It is a worryingly low number. Just 12.4% agree that they'll be able to find work where they live. We have to do more to support young people's motivations and be able to support young people to recognise, see and access quality work where they are. Only 1 in 3 young people think employers are supportive of hiring them, and under half are not confident that they will progress into a good job at all. The worrying thing is that the closer young people get to working age, the more that confidence decreases. Young people who are currently looking for work are finding it so difficult and so tough that they just don't think employers want to hire them. There's something going on across that network and landscape actively discouraging and stopping young people being able to find out what's next for them. As young people get closer to that working age, their confidence that they have the right skills, work experience, qualification, and network decreases too. I think people really believe that they have to have, or it certainly feels that they have to have every qualification, every skill and work experience to be able to access any level of work at the moment, stopping them being able to navigate, leaving them feeling wholly unprepared to be able to make those next steps too. We see again this year that young people are scoring their self-belief, confidence and motivation at an all-time low. 4 in 10 young people believe they have any of those skills whatsoever. It's really important that we do more to support them being able to move and access quality work. Which nicely leads me into what's next. Whilst we heard from young people in work that they faced less disruption than other groups, they didn't feel as disrupted by some of the strikes and some of the ongoing COVID-19 activities than perhaps those young people in education did. We heard at length this year the changes and challenges young people have had around their workload, stress, and pressure in the jobs that they currently do. Many young people felt the weight of additional responsibilities and tasks, and most felt they were unsupported with training, development, and any financial compensation for being able to do that too. We heard at length from young people that team members had been leaving and their employers are just not stepping in and up to move people into those roles and be able to support them. Wellbeing in work is down on last year's scores. 1 in 3 young people are currently in work struggling with their wellbeing, and around 5% less likely this year to be happy in their current role. Those currently in work told us of the struggles they'd had to access work in the first place. One of the biggest barriers they had was around anxiety. 10% of the young people in work this year told us that they were currently suffering with depression. For those young people in work now, it's a real need to embrace and encourage more of a supportive culture, more training, more support for line managers too. These young people currently in work have got some of the biggest anxiety and depression issues that we have. We have to make sure that we don't lose them from those working environments by not being a supportive culture. We heard at length too about how young people were feeling this year about being able to afford to work. There's a growing issue for young people. Challenges around locations, flexibility and travelling to work have risen around 8% this year too. It's coming up to young people's biggest concern and biggest challenge they're currently having in work is being able to travel to work, to be able to afford it, and what that means in terms of impacting their other responsibilities in the home too. We do see that young people in apprenticeships are some of the happiest in work overall. Apprentices score the most highly across the board about being happy in their role, and for 73.6% of apprentices, they feel prepared for their next steps too, which is some of the biggest figures that we have across the census against any other metric for being able to support the next steps for young people. We do hear from apprentices around the quality of training providers and inconsistencies in employer support and training, but actually the apprentice the apprentice report that you'll see that comes out today too has got some brilliant ideas that we'll be working through with employers across the network to ensure that the things that could be better for young people in apprentices are made better too. We know when employers and organisations are supporting young people, they are committing to developing the practice of young people at an individual level, and people's experience of work, being able to feel they can access it and being able to really thrive in it and enjoy it and feel motivated for it are one of the biggest factors across those areas too. As we close the key findings and hear directly from young people, the most important part of it too, I just wanted to finish on 2 points. You'll have heard me say throughout this session that the Youth Voice Census is a massive data set. Young people come to us 100 plus questions later, and we ask them at the end of the census if there's anything else they want to share with us. Some of them take that time to say, please stop asking us 100 questions and make it a bit shorter. But for the most part, young people really take it to ask and tell us firstly how important it is. Lots of young people thank us for that time and that moment to share their voice on these issues. But actually this year too, young people pleaded with us that we could do more to ask more questions about discrimination that they are hearing and facing within work too. It's a really important moment that actually young people are telling us that nobody's asking them about discrimination, isn't a factor that's working or being worked through and worked out with them. They don't feel like they have a safe space to talk about that at the moment. And secondly, for the past 6 years, young people have had a roller coaster journey with the skills that have been the top skills that they rate and the lowest skills that they rate too. Their confidence in their skills has taken a battering during COVID, and we see for the most part it's starting to rise this year. The biggest growth in confidence this year for young people was their listening skills. It's listening that they feel they do best. They don't always feel it's valued by employers or their parents or those around them. But actually, as we reflect back on some of the difficult messages we've heard today, what's most important to me as I share with you how young people feel is that young people are listening. And what we say next about young people and what we say next to young people couldn't be more important. The narrative cannot be negativity around young people. It has to be our chance to recognise and accept what we haven't changed. But we also have to start talking to them in a way that, one, shows we're listening, but also allows them to see how important they are too. So on that note, going to hand over to Eleanor Chambers, who is going to speak with both Harry and Kira from our Youth Voice sessions.
Hello, my name is Eleanor Chambers. I am the Youth Voice Policy and Research Coordinator, and today we are going to be having Kira, Harvey and Harry on board. Kira is our chair for our Youth Ambassador Board. Harvey has been part of our Youth Employment UK for a few years and is now part of our non-executive board of directors. And Harry is our young person who attended a Youth Voice session for the Youth Voice Census at the Merseyside Youth Association. So yes, welcome to everybody. So Kira, you've been part of Youth Employment UK's Youth Ambassador Programme for a number of years now, and it'd be great to hear your thoughts on the key findings from this year's Youth Voice Census.
Yeah, I think unfortunately the statistics they don't surprise me. It seems like there's just been a continued trend from the last couple of years, and COVID's made it just worse. It seems like there are always cracks in the system, I think, right through from education and mental health, and then COVID's just blown everything straight out of the water. But it's nice to see little kind of bits of hope in there as well, which is really nice. But yeah, I think someone touched on the point earlier. It's trying to work out why all of the really great work that's being done by not only Youth Employment UK, but other organisations that are in the call today, politicians and other organisations, it's somehow just not reaching young people and the people that it needs to reach. So I think it's trying to bridge that gap and everything, because we've got all of the statistics, we kind of know where the problems are. It's just why it's not quite reaching everywhere. But there are bits of hope, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic to hear. Obviously, your opinion over what we've spoken about today, and to be able to listen to young people share their experiences like yourself. And yes, thank you very much for sharing that with everybody, and everybody from different organisations can hear what you have to say. And so, Harry, I was wondering, this is the first time you've seen our Youth Voice Census, and we're so pleased that your contribution has been part of it. It'd be great to hear what most stood out to you from this year's findings.
So personally, I'd say the overall lack of support for young people is very prominent, and I know that's not just me who thinks that. I think nowhere to really go, especially if you're in a downward spiral, especially considering COVID, mentally wise and all such. There's nowhere to go for work. It's the classic thing, like you need experience to get experience. And like the only place you can really go is like either pushed off to uni and school, and if you don't go to uni, then you go into universal credit. And if you're on universal credit, all they care about is pushing you out the door, so random job pretty much. But like it's never any higher up job or quality work, for example. And I'd say most of all, it's just like it's just
What was that? Sorry, that last bit.
say like as I said before, it's just mostly nowhere to go. Like nobody really cares. There's no way of knowing these places to go get the support that you need.
Yeah, so you feel like there's been a lack of support for you, and that COVID has also had a big impact on that work experience aspect. You've not been able to receive enough work experience and sort of stuck in that rut.
Yeah, and the very much the thing of the area that you live into. No opportunities. The area might not even be safe, and for me, it definitely isn't, as it is for a lot of people and such. And yeah, there's a lot of unknowns in the life of a young person.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Um, Harvey, so you've been in and around Youth Employment UK for a long time, and it'd be great to hear your reflections as well on the key findings from this year's Youth Voice Census.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to echo the other points that have already been shared, but it's really interesting, but also really disappointing that young people are feeling more anxious about heading into work as they get closer to this. I've noticed that this seems to be a running theme over the last couple of years, and while there are so many organisations doing great things to bring young people on board, so many companies also put up unnecessary barriers when it comes to recruiting young people. So I think it goes back to the argument of how are young people meant to get the experience if nobody gives them a chance, and it's only the employers that can drive that change.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, how young people are supposed to get into employment when they can't get the experience, and there's no experience around for anyone, and that's a real strong point as well, and what we want to push with this Youth Voice Census and with what everyone has said collectively, as well as you guys that are here attending. What are we going to do about it? What can be changed? How can we push this narrative so that people can listen to you guys and, well, myself as well, and everyone here at Youth Employment and all different organisations. Yeah. Yes, so Harry, in our Youth Voice session at Merseyside Youth Association, you were part of the discussion with other young people who were sharing their challenges and what has worked for them and what doesn't work. Was there anything that stood out to you when hearing from your peers?
Yeah, I'd say, for example, me and everyone else, a youth association such as like MYA, like just a place to be seen and to be heard and to feel safe. That has been monumental, really, to be seen as an individual and to develop there. That, and everyone else would agree with me on that. Like, for example, you get free counseling, group work, and such qualifications that you need to get the jobs that you want. The staff are amazing. They pay for your travel, even like in the first few weeks if you do get a job and such. What doesn't work, I'd say, is that the job centers just rough out and that. And if you say you're struggling mentally and stuff, you don't get any support after that. Like forget about you pretty much. You just number.
Yeah.
Whereas, for example, youth association is very, like, as I said, use the word again, monumental. But finding out about these places is so hard. Like you don't know. I didn't even know this place existed or anything like that. And same with everyone else said, it's so hard to find these places in the first place. And even if you hear about it, you don't know what it entails, like how much it can actually help. Yeah, and like it's not even like I was quite privileged. Like I get the support of my parents and such. There are people way worse off than me who've got like children, have any support and such, but they've all welcomed that MYA has been monumental. I keep using the word monumental, but like it has been groundbreaking in terms of like his growth and his safety and well-being mentally.
Maybe they feel like full-time employee, you have those mentors and you have you're training as you're working, so you always feel like you have somewhere to go to for support, whether it's your tutors from your college or your distance learning. You have mentors on site, maybe people who have been through an apprenticeship themselves. I know I was very lucky that a lot of people were ex-apprentices and had gone through the exact same apprentice scheme as me. So it's really, really nice to see that not only I think the trend is that more people are looking at apprenticeships, but people are actually happier as well. I think it's really nice.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic as well. Like you said, that more people are learning about apprenticeships and getting to know about apprenticeships and different options that are out there. It's not one box fits all, if that's the saying. I hope so anyway.
Yeah.
Not one thing fits for everybody. And it's great that, these opportunities are going out for other people to learn about different pathways that are available for them. So yeah, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
So our Youth Voice Census findings are telling us that young people are struggling at key transition points. and receiving what would made your transition better?
I think for me, I didn't receive very personalized support at transition points. So I know careers leaders are under so much pressure, and that's when there is one in the school, but not all schools even have one. So I'm really glad I went to university, but I was forced down an academic route, told that I must do A levels to get there. And when I started university, I realised just how many people on my course came through other vocational routes, and that made me feel frustrated. I'm also self-employed, and I was told that when I set up my business alongside my studies that this wouldn't be a viable career option long term. But going into schools today, I see so many young people wanting to be sort of content creators, footballers, and there's no reason why they can't be. And I think we should all be doing whatever we can to encourage them to follow these goals and dreams, but also making sure they have realistic goals and expectations too. And I think for anyone that has to know that being there just to listen at those transition points can set them on a positive course towards success, and personalized support is really crucial to that.
Yeah, that's brilliant as well. Like you say, you know, you need in your life and your pathways, but not discourage you, you know, be realistic with you, offer a realistic point of view, and but still give you that advice and careers advice on, you know, different pathways to get to the same place. Like you said, university, other people are taking up different pathways to get there, but they got there. So I think that's brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. I'm gonna draw our youth voice session to a close, but maybe I might just come in and ask one killer question of each of you. We have got over 100 people joining this call. Ellie, I'm going to ask you this question too.
Yep.
For those of you that don't know, Ellie is in week 2, I think, this week. So, or maybe it's now week 3. So I think she's done a phenomenal job in hosting the session today. But if you were to get one ask of the people in the room today to do one thing to support what we've heard through the Youth Voice Census and what you know to be young people's barriers and challenges, what is the one ask you have? Harry, we'll start with you. We'll go to Kira. We'll go to Harvey. And that, Ellie, means you get the longest time to think about your answer, because I'm throwing that one at you. As you'll have seen, Ellie, we throw lots at you at Youth Employment UK, but because you can catch. It's because you can catch. Right, Harry, what's your one thing that you would want people to know and do?
I would say to recognize the millions of people young people that in the down and vast more places to go, like associations, making them known too. Things like that pretty much. You know.
Hearing your story, Harry, the Merseyside Youth Association has obviously played just such a massive part in your life in time when you were facing a number of difficulties and not knowing where to go. The MYA and the support from the team up there really kind of helped you fulfill your potential in a safe way. So more of Merseyside Youth Associations and other youth associations across the board. I hear that. Thank you very much, Harry. Kira, what's your one thing you'd like people to do in the room?
Oh, such a hard question. I think the one thing, there's so many, but I think the one thing is just to remember who you're doing this for. You're doing this for young people who come from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, different races, ethnicities, sexualities. You're doing this for young people. And I think remembering how you felt when you were leaving school or university or wherever you were, so when you were a young person deciding on what you wanted to do for your career, I think remember how you felt when you were that age as well, and you were at that point in your life. Because I think although quite a few things have changed, not a lot's changed. I think the feelings are still the same. Feeling scared, like you've got 20 different crossroads and maybe there's about 10 roadblocks on them and everything. So I think remember who you're doing this for and just keep young people kind of in right there in the center when you're making different plans, when you're making different routes to go down, new internships in your company, or you're introducing new apprenticeships. Just remember that young people should be at the center of that. And I think, yeah, it will be fine.
Thank you, Kira. And Kira has joined us on a lunch break from her work. So I know that you've got to go to class now too. So thank you very much, Kira, for joining us on your lunch break today. Harvey, what do you want to ask? You've been with me and Youth Employment UK for a number of years. The one thing people need to take away from this year is Youth Voice Census.
I think that young people really do have the power to change the world, and you could be that one person that points them in the right direction. So if there's anything you can do to make a change, to support a young person, or to influence others around you to make a change, then do it.
Simple as that. Absolutely. Thank you, Harvey. Now, Ellie, you've been here for 2 weeks, half a day. You've seen what we know it in employment UK.
What are we needed or any changes or to them at the moment? What can we do to make their lives easier by giving them experience, or when they're coming in for interviews, sort of make them feel more comfortable or anything like that? Just bear in mind that it's a scary world and young people have a lot of challenges at the moment, and please be mindful of that.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, every one of you, for your brilliant insight, and Ellie for chairing the youth panel today. So we're just going to move on to our recommendations following this year's Youth Voice Census. We've heard the recommendations for our panel, but of course at Youth Employment UK, our work stems not just in youth voice activity, but also in the work with employers and policymakers and partners. So when we were thinking about what our next steps are, we have identified these 3 key areas. I think, and it probably links back just to what Ellie was just saying then, we have to champion young people. We have to lead the way, and not just the royal we of Youth Employment UK, but the 103 organisations, individuals that are in this room. You have an opportunity to take a leadership role nationally and at hyperlocal level to ensure that young people are at the heart of service design, and most importantly, are getting the services that they need to feel secure in who they are, their place in society, and their future. Young people certainly can't drive the change. They can't make sure that investment's available to them locally. They can't see and they can't know what they don't know. So making sure that those of us that are working in and around young people are joining up the dots wherever we can has just got to be a fundamental priority for all of us. It's great to see that careers education in schools is improving, and as a trusted and key partner to Careers and Enterprise Company and other career organisations that are in the room and doing some great stuff, the tide is changing around that area. We absolutely know that to be true, but we have to continue to invest. Transition doesn't just happen in the school time from age 11 to 16 or age 11 to 18. We've heard too much through this year's Youth Voice Census about the older young people within our cohorts and in our communities who were left behind during COVID, and no one's caught them up. We have to make sure that across college and university there's parity, and that careers education and work experience is happening for all young people. But we're really mindful of those million young people who are not in full-time education or employment right now, and how do we make sure that they catch up from the lost support and are able to identify opportunities around them to get out of that kind of situation they might find themselves in and move into a positive destination. So continuing to invest, but ensuring that no one in the system is being left behind or falling through gaps. It's got to be a focus for so many of us. And throughout the Youth Voice Census, and key to some of those findings was that young people, 12.4% only, think that they'll find a good opportunity where they live. And so here at Youth Employment UK, we've heard that. We've been hearing that story for a number of years, but in particular, seeing it this year and seeing the numbers drop from last year has been a really kind of stark reminder to us that there's probably more that we can do as an organisation. So I'm really proud to say that the team across the summer, as we've been analysing this, have been thinking and asking ourselves, what more can we do? We know employers are trying to create good opportunities. We know our youth partners are creating good opportunities. We know that many colleges and other training providers and educational spaces are trying to create and are creating good opportunities. How do we ensure that young people can, when there is one near them? And so to that end, across the summer and launching now, we have reinvigorated our commitment to good youth employment by changing up our membership model here at Youth Employment UK and creating the Good Youth Employment Standards, a membership that all organisations can sign up to and show their commitment to meeting those good youth employment standards, because we know young people are looking for organisations with that commitment in mind. So something for you to go and have, there is a rallying cry right now to say, join us in changing young people's feelings about where they live and what opportunities are available to them by working with us to become a champion of the Good Youth Employment Standards, and us all holding that badge and all thinking about how we make our opportunities more accessible to every young person, whatever they may be. So a lot in all of that, but hopefully now you'll be inspired to go and read these Voice Census, which has been dropped in your inboxes, but also dropped in the chat function, and of course is now fully available across the Youth Employment UK website. You'll be able to tweet and contact us through the Youth Voice Census hashtag, and please do share your reflections from today's session. There's a QR code, of course there is, we're in 2023, so you can take your phones and get a screen grab of that QR code right now, which will take you straight to the report. But please do take the time to share back your reflections and reach out to the team across Youth Employment UK to work out what we can do more together to ensure that next year's insights, perhaps a little bit more positive. Than the 2023